Hello guys, this is Alex, and this video is a gameplay and walkthrough of a King's Rest that I did on my Restoration Druid, and kind of have a narrate and walkthrough of how I approach this dungeon, what I do for certain adds and bosses, and you as a healer, some things that maybe you can find helpful. Just keep in mind, I'm no expert in Mythic Plus. I don't run Mythic Plus very often. I usually run it maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So there are some things that I might not catch or I might not talk about that are probably important, but for the most part, I've run a good enough amount of King's Rest to know the general things that you should be aware of as a healer and just a player in general. And I know a lot of people, some of my viewers have been requesting something like this. So I'm just going to go over, I'm not going to show the whole thing in its entirety. I'm going to fast forward in some areas, but I'm just going to narrate kind of like my thought process and everything. And hopefully you guys can find this helpful. I did make my mouse cursor a little bit bigger than normal, so hopefully you can see where I'm pointing for certain things. So again, this is a 15 with certain guildies in my guild, some mains and some molds. So it wasn't really a super hard push, just kind of a casual push. This is kind of my build I have for Mythic Plus. So this week was Necrotic. So I used Vitality Conduit. This transfers the health again, so you can negate the necrotic stats. Well of Existence is nice because people are dipping below 50% health. You will get benefit from this. And then Spirit of Preservation makes us have a stronger regrowth. And then Ever Rising Tide for our mana and intellect. For gear, just the default gear, nothing too crazy. It's kind of honestly the same as my raiding gear, as I'm more of a raid healer. I have more experience in it, but for the most part, this is my stats. My mastery could be a lot higher for Mythic Plus, but for the most part, I am not too of a high key pusher, so it doesn't really matter. It's a 15. As long as you play the class decently well, you'll be set. So for the first part, we're going to pull these 2 adds in the beginning. Now, the main thing about these adds is that they have a huge conal, wherever they'll be facing, they're going to have this huge slam. And you can see it through kind of like electricity on the ground, and you just want to avoid it since it's always going to be on the tank. It's pretty easy to dodge. Just never be behind the tank, as you can see there. These things also enrage at around, I think, 20 to 30% health, and as a druid we can soothe the target, and also it was enraging or whatever, the affix where they enrage at a certain health, so that was nice. So just wait until they get the affix enrage and their normal health enrage. And then for these adds, they fear you if they touch you. DKs can kind of AMS this. Warriors can whirlwind it. Demon Hunters can purge it, but they have like a cooldown on it. And then Shamans, they can purge it without any cooldown. So as long as you pull those 2 adds in the beginning, it doesn't really matter if you get feared by those adds because you'll be fine. Again, pull these 2 adds right here. Simple. Tank faces it away from the rest of the group. Just make sure you're behind these adds, and that's pretty simple. Focus 1 if it's a certain affix or something, but for the most part it's a 15, so nothing crazy. So again, I wait until both enrages and then I soothe it, as you can see there. So simple enough for those adds. We go into the pylon here. For this specific add, it does 2 casts where it puts a debuff, really nasty debuff on a target. The lingering dot right here, as you can see, it's casting. We can dispel this, which is kind of nice. So don't have to worry about too much if you're interrupting group. If you play a Resto Druid, you can dispel it. I know other healers can dispel the other one. I forgot what it's called, but we'll find out pretty soon enough. For me as a Resto Druid, one thing I do as a little trick is, since we kite these will naturally explode if you kite them a long distance. But it's also nice just to root them. So what I use is Mass Entangle them, so they stop following us, and then we just have the main ad following us. Now there is a weird trick though I found, that if you root them all, they don't explode because she kind of makes them explode if they're nearby. So I noticed that none of the small ads were following, and I found out recently if you just have at least one, they should all have a chain reaction. So just make sure one's kind of nearby her, and then get them out of the route, and then come back to the group. And since we have a pretty good group of interrupters, should be no issue there of getting any of the debuffs. But as you can see there, they all start following, and then I think we just have one ad left. Yep, just one ad. And that's pretty much it for that pylon. So this is a pretty interesting room. Just gotta be careful on some ads here. So our DK, he's pretty geared, and I can heal this pretty easily. So we pull both the Shadow Bone Warriors over here and the Witch Doctor and Champion together. Sometimes, depending on the affix of the week, you do not want to pull them together. But for the most part, we had pretty good DPS and we can melt them. Now, one thing that is keep in mind is the Champion, the really big guy with the shield. He will enrage at a certain health point. I do not remember. And you need to make sure you soothe him because he whacks the tank pretty hard. And then the Shadowborn Witch, I think it's called. You need to make sure you interrupt this Shadow Bolt volley. We do not interrupt it, as you can see. And our entire group just chunks. So no one died, thankfully. But you need to make sure you're interrupting that, because if your group is not topped off, as you saw, a lot of them would have died. And then again, we have the fear ads, but it wasn't too bad. We had looks like a paladin, bubble it to get them down. And again, you can see here, he gets enraged, and these things will just hurt the tank, especially if they're under geared. You need to make sure that's dispelled. If you're a healer that doesn't have soothe, obviously, just prepare to use a defensive cooldown. Again, we have the witch again with the shadow bolt. You need to interrupt, and this time we do make sure we're interrupted. Again, as a healer, since there's not a lot of times I'm healing, I'm making sure that I'm applying my Moonfire and Sunfire dots on the ads. The higher the key though, the less I find myself cat weaving and going to cat form doing DPS. But I want to make sure I'm at least doing DPS passively through my 2 dots and Solar Wrath when there's nothing to be healed, since our hots do allow the healing for us. And then I also have the Mott Trinket, which is a 2-minute cooldown, which does damage. It also give you a good amount of mana back. So that's a couple of ways I do damage when I can't use cat form. This can be a little dangerous group, again, since you have the warriors and the champions and the witch. So again, just make sure that the witch gets interrupted. Deathly chills, they're just things that's just going to hurt the party members or the tank, I believe. It's not really a big issue. Just want to make sure that you are interrupting the witch for that shadow bolt, and then soothing the champion once he reaches his enraged timer if you're a Resto Druid. That's pretty much it for this group. Looks like it got a little crazy here with the Repelli getting some aggro. As you see, he had 17 necrotic stacks, so I put Vitality Conduit on him once he was at this amount of stacks, so you can see his health go up because his health was being transferred from other party members to him, so which is kind of nice. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the ads. Now for the boss itself. The main thing about this boss is it's going to put a debuff on you where it's, I think, spit gold, and after a couple seconds you drop off a patch of gold, and after his mechanic where he summons ads, after that patch of gold will be an ad. So you see on Terranos or Rep Paladin, it's on him. It's going to do quite a bit of damage depending on their class. Obviously, if they're plate, they're going to take less damage compared to, say, a cloth. So you just want to make sure, for me as a Resto Druid, I'm putting a lot of hots on them. I was also trying to do some DPS, so that's why I wasn't immediately putting hots on them. So again, you can see that's pretty much the biggest thing as a healer. You should always be pretty much at range there. There's no reason to be in melee. And then for this, the ads, they try to go to the boss. I forget what, I think he just does more damage, I think, or it's a debuff to the entire raid, but I rooted them with my Mass Entanglement so we can have more DPS on the boss. And again, since we're in range, you don't need to worry about that. AoE he does. But you can see I spit gold, and you can kind of see it. I only had 2 rejuves, a rejuve and a germination, and I was still taking a considerable amount of damage. So at the higher keys you go, King's Rest has some pretty nasty dots that it does. So just heads up on that. So this is pretty much rinse and repeat of the boss. Just keep moving him more and more because you have the spit gold debuff going on, and that's pretty much it. Again, I rooted them. I think, yeah, rooted the ads so we can focus on the boss. If you don't have a root or stun or a mass stun for these ads, then just want to DPS them down and kite the boss away from these ads. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So once we kill the boss, we go into the next room. And this can be a little interesting here. Okay. So as a Resto Druid and a Blood DK, it was kind of easy to heal through this phase, and also depending on the week, if it's fortified, these ads will do a lot more damage, but since it was tyrannical, it wasn't too much. This 2 pair of ads, one guy does a whirlwind. As a melee, just want to make sure you get away from, so as a healer, just get away from him, because he will do a shit ton of damage, as you can see. And then the female, she kind of has like a mind control, just DPS the target down, whoever she MCs, and then get her down. They don't really hurt too much from the tank, but yeah, that's kind of anything noteworthy there. And for me, I'm just making sure that I'm putting my efflorescence down pretty much wherever the ad is, whatever ad gets picked, because I take the Spring Blossoms trait, so that's just another hot that will passively happen. Now these guys, since it was necrotic and there was a lot of ads here, you're going to notice the tank's necrotic stats are going to be insanely high very quickly. So that's something I saw, and I put Iron Bark on him ahead of time to get ready for that, because he will not be able to do any self-healing to himself from his death strikes, and myself, I can't do any healing. So once he gets to around 27, as you saw there, I put Vitality Conduit to get his health to at least do some healing, because basically all my hots are doing nothing now. And then now I think I told him to kite, because there's pretty much nothing I can do. And as a Blood DK, it's kind of hard. I think we try to do some stuns, but I don't think you can stun this big guy, I'm not sure. But as a Blood DK, they don't have the best kiting, as you can see. So they only have Death's Advance and maybe Wraithwalk if they chose it. So that's pretty much it for that ad. Now for this ad right here, it's a dinosaur with a female archer. The dinosaur itself is pretty easy to take care of. The female archer though, she does an insane amount of damage to the tank, so you need to make sure that you're watching the tank's health. Now as a Blood DK and as a geared Blood DK, he was able to heal himself pretty easily. Just depending, again, if it was fortified, she would be doing way more damage, but you can see kind of his health would just dip very rapidly. So that's something just to be aware of on this pack. Now for this pack right here, the 2 ads, or the middle one is especially, he's going to be doing a kind of like this cast and then an insane AoE lightning damage. And as a Blood DK and as a Druid, we can push him out of that. So you can see Channel Lightning. Once he starts that cast, he will do an insane amount of damage for about 9 seconds. And I just saw the Blood DK just pulled him out and it stopped that cast. As a Resto Druid, we can use Typhoon to push him out of that. It's after he finished his initial cast, which is a short cast, and then it's a channel. So you need to make sure he is finishing that first initial cast, and then make sure just interrupt these ads. And then one of these ads also put a nasty debuff on you from physical, but nothing too crazy there. Now for this pylon, this is the fear one. For this week, it's something to be concerned about is with necrotic stats, since it's all the ads. Just make sure, watch the tank's health. If he gets too much of necrotic stacks, put a Vitality Conduit, put an Iron Bark on him, and that's pretty much it. Usually dispel the tank all the time whenever you have the chance, because he's the one that's going to be kiting the ad. Usually Blood DKs can AMS the fear, but however, our DK AMS a little bit too early, so he got feared. But you pretty much always want to prioritize the tank if he has the fear, so he can keep on kiting and not go backwards, say, if he does get feared. And then if the tank doesn't have it, try to dispel yourself so you can constantly heal the tank if need be, and any other DPS that take damage. So we took it out pretty simple. Now this ad right here, he's going to do a kind of fire slam on the ground, as you can see right here, which the tank will kind of face it away from the middle. And then he's going to do a huge laser in a 360, where you just pretty much need to stay behind the ad. So the tank will probably always get this debuff on him because he's in front of him, but as you can see, just rotate around him, and pretty simple. And then after he does that, you just go back to the smash, do a couple more smashes where he leaves the fire debuff on the ground, and then do the laser again. But obviously, very simple, especially with non-fortified. Now we go to the next room. Now these ads right here, these embalming fluids, these, depending on the healing class and especially range, it really sucks because they constantly put, they spew out like green shit on the ground. And if you're ranged and you're casting, you kind of can't be casting. You kind of can only do instant cast. And thankfully, as a Resto Druid, I can just toss out rejuves and germinations while I can still move. Depending on the week, you can do a big pull on these guys. Even on bolstering, you can still pull quite a bit since they don't really have a lot of health. If you AoE them down pretty evenly, you should be fine. But as you see, they're constantly putting things on the ground that just keep moving out of. Especially the more you pull, the more green swirls you will have. But again, they're pretty easy. You don't need to dispel them on raged. They're not too hard. It's just make sure you got to keep moving, and then they do put a nasty like debuff if you step in this green shit, but it's not too hard. Now for these construct ads, there's 2 of them in each side of the room. You want to tank it. You want to have the tank it as close as possible to one of these tombs or whatever, because of this ability right here called Entomb. Because if you have him literally right next to it, as soon as he is casting it, you just start spamming this thing. Just start clicking on the tomb, because he will always put it to the closest tomb, put the person to the tomb he's always closest to. So you can pretty much get it out immediately. So you're gonna see it, bam, he's already out. So pretty much no DPS is lost since he was right next to the tomb. And you can even take the other construct if you want and pull him over to this ad as well, and you can both have both constructs next to this tomb, and they would both put him in the one next to it, which is pretty nice. But again, that's how you handle these ads in this room. So we'll just get towards the boss itself. Okay, now I finished up all the ads in the room. Now we're getting ready to pull this boss. This boss does do the same mechanic of Entomb like those 2 other ads on each side of the room. However, it is not going to be whatever tomb he's closest to. So you need to make sure that you have people that can cross, be on both sides of the room, which would be optimal. But for me, since I'm ranged, I'll just be covering this side. Now this drain fluids is something for healers, we need to worry about. It's just a nasty debuff that he channels that will do quite a bit of damage. And you just need to make sure at the end that you heal that person up to full after that channel. Again, you saw the Entomb, got him out. Pretty simple. Tank is taking a lot of damage. I don't think I used any cooldowns on it. Since he's a blood DK, they can heal up a lot of damage that they take. One thing that's nice about this, I think I do it, is if you are a Night Elf, you can actually Shadow Meld this ability and he will stop the channel. I'm not sure if I do it here. I don't think I do. Okay, I don't. Must have been not paying attention, I guess, but you can Shadow Meld this and the debuff, or the channel, sorry, would stop. And so it's less healing that you need to do. I think I do it again. Yep, there you go. So I Shadow Meld and he just stops and goes back to attacking the tank. So again, another reason why you see a lot of Night Elves in Mythic Plus, especially high Mythic Plus keys, is because you can cheese a lot of tank or boss abilities with Shadow Meld. Again, it's on me, but this time I don't have Shadow Meld up, so just make sure as a Resto Druid, put a lot of hots on you. It does quite a bit of damage, but not too much. And that's pretty much it. Obviously, it puts fire on the ground. Don't stand in it as a ranged healer. You shouldn't have an issue. If you're a Holy Pally or a Rising Mist Monk, might be a different story. But very easy boss in my opinion. Just make sure you're able to heal that fluids debuff and get the person out of the tomb, depending on which side they are. Now we go up to this hallway. Now this hallway to me is probably the worst part. This long stretch of hallway is the worst part of the entire dungeon because of the ads. They put some nasty debuffs on the tanks and do insane amount of damage. These 2 casters, make sure people interrupt them. They don't pose that much of a problem. It's the berserkers that are actually the issue here. Is they put a nasty physical bleed on the tank or whoever they are close to when they cast this ability, and it hurts. It hurts a lot. As you can see, I think she will charge. Yeah, Severing Blade. That's it. She will charge people, and you can't really see it because Necrotic is blocking my debuffs for the tank, but it's on him, and he takes a considerable amount of damage. Want to make sure you're interrupting the hexes on these priests, so your DPS, your group can do more DPS. But that's pretty much it. I think our Demon Hunter just died from the Berserker. I'd have to double check here. Yeah, he did the leap. And the leap has a swirling animation where they're going to land, so it's kind of easy to see, but as a melee, there's a lot of stuff going on, so we're fine. His body went flying all the way to over here. It's kind of insane. And I didn't use the B-Res because these ads are almost dead, so just save the B-Res for a boss fight or when we actually needed it. So now for these two next ads, it's the same thing. Berserker and a Witch Doctor. The Witch Doctor is really not an issue at all. It's just the Berserker again with the nasty rend debuff it does. Nothing too special here. Yeah, Severing Blade. There's the Bloody Leap. Does that swirl, just make sure to dodge it. And it's kind of it. Nothing too crazy for these pack of bats, so let's move on. Okay, one thing you see here is we don't pull the next pack, is because this is Brute right here, and as soon as we were kind of done with fighting, I don't know, we could have pulled him, but we just wait because he does a pat back and forth this entire bridge, and you don't really want to tank him with anything else because of just how nasty he is, and he does have a considerable amount of health. So you always want to tank him alone and make sure you just never pull him with any other groups. These two raptors here, they will charge and then do this kind of like clawing channel. Well, they'll just repetitively claw whatever place they're facing. Sorry, that was hard to say. And just make sure you're just out of it. Hunting Leap, yeah. And the DK, they can actually grip these things back to them. I'm not sure if a Druid if we can Typhoon it. But yeah, they're pretty easy ads. Nothing too crazy here. Now, as you see, there are these two pylons here. And these pylons are actually really nice because you can avoid a lot of the trash on this bridge, which is what you want to do. So we take the first one to the right, which is the glob one, as a healer. So one thing that you see a lot of groups doing is the tank will just tank the ooze just off wherever, far from the group, because of the stuff the Blood Corruptor puts on the ground. It's like that slow goo shit or whatever. So you want to make sure he's just kind of out, so the DPS, if it's melee and range, can get rid of the tentacles. So for me, I make sure that the tank is kind of hotted up because he's probably going to go out of range, and then I'll stay here with the DPS, do some damage, and make sure myself and the rest of the DPS get heals, because these tentacles do considerable amount of damage with their channel. So tank will be fine regardless of what class they are. They'll be fine for like a couple seconds without you healing them, and then just once we finish those tentacles down, kite the boss over the bridge past all these ads, because we'll just go right to the third boss. So it's very easy. It's a nice skip, obviously, and that's why it was implemented this season. So you can have a lot of different routes. So we just skip all these ads, even the ads right here on the stairs. We just pull it all the way down. Now this boss is very interesting. It is, a lot of people hate this boss. I myself am not a fan because it's actually 3 bosses in one. Before we get started, if you're not familiar, you have one boss that kind of just a charge. Basically, you'll select one person, and between the boss and the person selected, you need to have people standing between them. So when he does the charge, the final damage when he reaches the person is less, because the more people have, the more damage everyone can soak. You have one ad that just kind of does magical casts over and over. You just need to interrupt them, and then he'll summon 4 totems. You need to DPS all those 4 totems down because they all will do annoying things, especially the one where it's an explode totem, where if you do not kill it before it finishes casting, pretty much the entire group dies except the tank. And then the last one, and the worst one, probably is the blade one. The blade where she throws these boomerang axes around, 2 of them around her, and they slowly start from where she originated and then slowly go out to the entire room, and you'll see in this fight. But this is kind of how the bosses work, especially on Tyrannical. It can be a little hairy, but I think for the most part this boss didn't really give us too much of an issue. So as you can see, barrel through, we got in between the mage and the boss, and the boss took the mage took less damage than if he just soaked it outright. Now he also does this thing called what's it called, like a backslap or something, but it's a tank debuff, and the tanks need to make sure they kite it if they get it, because I think they tank like 200% increased damage. One way to negate this is having you or anyone with a taunt to kite him back. So see how he had the debuff, and if this thing touches him, he's gonna start getting wailed and he'll die in probably 2 hits. So what I do is I go into bear form, I get really far away from the boss, and I taunt him to let the debuff fall off. I try to get as far as possible, and then he just taunts back once it falls off. And that's an easy way to deal with this boss. I think the next one, we get the totem one. So pretty much just interrupt all the casts he does. I think he does one where it's a plague. That's the most important one, Poison Nova. You want to make sure you are interrupting that. Now keep in mind, whenever you kill one of the bosses, their abilities kind of will happen throughout the fight. They themselves won't be targetable, but their mechanics will still be going on. I think I Shadow Meld this. I'm not sure if I do. I don't think I do. But I do think you can Shadow Meld this. Now as you can see, the totems are out, and one totem was putting the swirls on the ground as I was getting hit by the barrel through. So that was fun. So I almost died there, but so there's a lot of stuff that these totems do that you just don't want to have happen, and you just want to get them down as quick as possible. Here you saw actually I forgot about this. Yeah, so the explode one did go off. I was the only one that died because I think I was really low on health. So we had a blood DK, so that was nice. We got a quick res, and I was able to get everyone topped off. It was a little dicey here. In this situation, when you get rezzed, focus on the tank. Focus on you and the tank. Don't focus on the DPS as much. This is just coming from personal experience. This is not coming from a professional, again. But I'm going to go back a little bit. But as you can see, I'll go back to my death. I think everyone else was anticipating this because I was just paying attention to the healing meters. The mage ice blocked, I think, or something, and I think the paladin, they can always just survive anything. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So I'm res in this situation, and you have 2 DPS with pretty low health with no health on them, which is not good. Myself at 50 and the tank at 35, I would say. So in this situation, how I would do this is just dump hots on the tank, because you just don't want the tank to die. He already did not get he was already like not getting healed for a considerable amount of time when you died. So you just want to make sure he's topped off, because once he's topped off, then that's when you know you're safe, because if the tank dies, then you die. And even if you have a B-res, you're the first person that the boss will go after because of your healing aggro. So in this situation, I throw on like 3 or 4 hots on the tank, Vitality Conduit, Cenarian Ward, and then I start focusing on everyone else, because as long as the tank is fine, then I can start focusing. If a DPS dies, then so be it. You know, it was already a janky pull with me dying, but this is how your priority should be, is focus on yourself and the tank as soon as you get rezzed. And then the last one, and the worst one, is this Axe boss. We call her Axe Lady. but you always want a tanker in the middle. You can play this kind of different. So as a melee, you just run out once she does that cast and run back in. You can do the same thing too if as a ranged. You can be stacked in, and then once that cast goes off, run out, and then they'll go back in. See, once the axes go out, or you can just stay on the outside and then wait for the axes to come to you and kind of just run away from them. Actually got hit by it, even though I didn't see the animation. And then she does put this nasty debuff on you, even if you don't, from not getting hit from the blade, just for her mechanic. Just make sure that you are healing yourself or whoever it is and putting a considerable amount of healing on them, because even with a defensive cooldown, you get chunked. You get chunked from this. So now it's on the Paladin. I put Vitality Conduit, Life Bloom, Rejuve, and regrowth, and another rejuve, and you can still see he's still getting chunked. So now it's finally off. I stepped in axe, so it does a little bit of ticking damage, but nothing too crazy compared to the one she actually does. And then we finally kill it. So not the best pull, but not the greatest either. And then so we take the portal back to where he pulled it. And then what happened here was, what happens is usually if you do the dungeon normally, once you kill the last boss, you have the ads already killed on top of the stairs, and you have that cinematic. And what that cinematic does is it lowers the bridge so you can cross. But since we did not kill those ads, and we did not come out in the real world at that part, the cinematic does not start, so the bridge is not down for us. So what happens is the mage and the DK kind of inch forward here where they try to start the RP, and I think that's what they do. So yeah, they're in the other side, and they just try to get the animation to start to get that drawbridge to come down. And then once the cinematic is done, you yourself can actually stay in here, and the tank or anyone actually just needs to go on the other pylon, and since to activate that boss or mini boss, he'll actually show up in your realm as well, since it's technically the same realm. So here you have the growths that slow you down. I just turn into a cat and use Tiger Dash to cover ground as quickly as possible. I turn back because this is the tank buster boss, and he puts a very nasty debuff on the tank, and you just gotta be very careful. Make sure he's topped up before he does this to the tank, and then he puts a blue AoE on the ground. Just need to dodge for everyone. So Spirit Breaker, this is where he just basically pummels the tank, and it puts a debuff on the tank for about, I think, 5 seconds, where they take increased damage. The tank should be using defensives when this happens. The more geared the tank, the less of an issue it is, and depending on the tank, they also mitigate differently. So Blood DK can just heal this back up, and then you can just kite it as well as the tank, just to let the debuff fall off. And that's pretty much it. So we come out here, and we're gonna be at percentage short, so we will pull ads from the bridge, but we go after Shadow of Zul here. Now for this boss, or mini boss, from what I've heard, he was pretty bad back in the day. I did not play in the 1 or 2 season. I did play in season 3 of Mythic Plus for BFA, but I've heard he was very bad. But for this boss, he just constantly puts this nasty magical debuff on the tank, and it just does an insane amount of damage. As a Blood DK, you can AMS this and take reduced damage. Every tank will take this differently, but just keep in mind the tanks are going to get chunked from this ad. Then there's another mechanic where he will put a red circle on the ground. If no one's standing in it, it will pulsate and the entire group will take damage. Usually you or range will stand in it, sometimes a melee if they're closer. And then the last mechanic will be a fiery circle where it will explode. It will choose someone, and you just need to get out of the group, and it will explode after a certain amount of time. So you'll see that here with this ad. So as you can see, the tank is getting chunked. You got Pool of Darkness. one of us. Yep, so the mage stands in it. He will himself will start taking damage because he's standing in that puddle, but it saves you and the rest of the group from taking damage. And you saw the paladin running out with this, and the group did not take as much damage compared to if he was standing in here with that fire debuff. And I actually should have dispelled. I don't think I soothed Zul. I was too busy healing, but that's one thing to make sure during this week of enraging. And then since we're an ad short, we're going to LOS these ads. Since I can moonfire them and range them with Sunfire and Moonfire, I just wait for the Brute to pass and then moonfire them to get their aggro, and then I just LOS behind this pillar and let the tank get them. It's nothing too crazy. Again, it's the Raptors. Just avoid their frontal cone. And the priest does Hex. Make sure you interrupt that. And then you have an archer where she does poison barrage, and just make sure you're not standing in that line. But you can also stun these ads as well, which is very nice. So after that, we get our ad completion, and we're on to the final boss. Now for this boss, this is sometimes can be the death of a dungeon, depending on how it goes sometimes. It is a very healing intensive fight. So prepare yourself, especially at the last phase of the fight. When he gets on his second dinosaur, there's a lot of damage that's going to be going out. He's going to have these tornadoes that come out. Try not to get hit by them. You see me getting hit by them, and they put a nasty debuff on you, and they do ticking damage. And you saw where I needed to get out with the fire circle around me. The farther you are, the less damage it does. Obviously in Tyrannical, it's going to do a lot more damage than usual. His first raptor comes out. It's going to do the conal like all the other raptors. You just avoid it. No one should be really taking damage from this, so as a healer, just make sure that your DPS and tank are not getting hit by it. He will do blade combo to the tank. This is after every time he charges someone with the fire circle around them. He'll charge, go out, and then come back and do the blade combo, and the tank will take some damage. They'll have to use a mitigation, so as you can see, he came back from his jump, and then now it's a channel of about 2 seconds. Just make sure you're ready for it if the tank is not topped off or prepared for it. And then once the same mechanics happen, and then for his second dinosaur, this one's going to do a Deathly Roar, which is a fear. So this has wiped my groups in the past where we don't anticipate this roar and someone dies because someone's not topped off, because for that short amount of time, you can't do any healing, obviously. If you have a shaman, yes, you can totem it and get rid of the fear. He still does the blade combo. We do hero at this part, so the dinosaur did die pretty quickly. The last thing before he does that is important is he will have these spears that come down in a line, and they will kind of go around the entire room. And we stand here because they start here, and instead of having to run around and having it follow us, we can just step over and have to worry about and stay in the same position. So they come down like that, and there you can see it's starting to come around, and we're on this side, so you don't have to worry and have to run away. Again, avoid tornadoes, blade combo for the tank, make sure you're ready for it. The leap, just get ready because that's going to do a lot of damage once he reaches that person. And that's pretty much it. This boss, just depending if you're not comfortable or you know all mechanics, it can catch you off guard, and you can have a lot of people dying as a healer. There's a lot of spike damage, so having people not topped off or not a good amount of health, we'll see them dying sometimes, but the more you're comfortable with it, the more comfortable you be with the dungeon and the boss itself. So this was my walkthrough and guide. of what I do as a restoration druid. This was not my best explanation, but as it was not written or anything, but this is kind of what is in my mind as a healer and a resto druid, and that maybe you can find helpful. I will try to do these more in the future, and obviously since this was my first time, there is a lot I can improve upon and talk about and have it more structured. But this was the first time I kind of had this idea that I thought would be really good. I also thought of adding some add-ons where you can see kind of my casts I'm doing, every single cast, when I do these dungeon runs. But let me know. Please let me know any comments you think I can do this better. If you have any questions on certain things I talked about in this dungeon that I probably did not go over thoroughly, please let me know. But yeah, this is my first time, and I look forward to doing more and improving, and I appreciate everyone that's been reaching out and telling me how much I've helped them through guides and all the weak cores and add-ons. Again, if you are interested in any add-ons or my UI and weak cores you saw in this video, you can join my Discord, and the link for the invite is down below in the description. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.